Hey everybody, it's author MD New, and I'm back again with more writing tips and tricks to share with you today. Today I want to focus on a very important topic. It's called editing. You know, that thing that we as authors all dread. But it is exceedingly important, and we have to discuss it and we have to talk about it. So we're going to chat about it. As always, I've got the link below where this you can jump over to my blog and read the full article with all the additional information and everything like that. So let's begin. So once you've typed the end on your book and you've celebrated because the manuscript is finished and life is good and glorious and everything is wonderful, it's time to think about editing. And I'm not talking about the big editing. I'm talking about the very basic, very minimal editing that has to take place at this part. And this is nixing your overly used words, your filtering and filler words. And there are tons of them. I'm going to give you a few here, but in the blog post, I have links to sites that have a whole bunch of others. So it's just things for you to keep an eye out. And these are some of the ones that really stand out. So some overly used words are really, actually, very, and just. I cannot tell you for me personally how many times I've had to go back and get rid of the 200, the 300 times I used really, or actually, or very. I think at one point I had used very almost 1,000 times in a book. Yeah, it needed to go. It was really bad. Same with just. You know, these words are used way too much in writing. And it's not just one author, it's all authors. That's why they're considered overly used words and they need to be gotten rid of. Next up is filtering words. So words like saw, heard, thought, could, watched. These words, obviously there's a time and a place for everything, but these are words that if you can do something else instead of saying he saw a bird or he heard so and so speak, figure out another way, a more creative way to illustrate that for your readers. We're writers. This is what we do. We paint pictures with words. So don't use these types of words like saw, heard, thought, could, watch. It's bad, and editors, once your book goes into editing, will ding you for it. So if you can nix them early on, it saves you a bunch of time in the future. One of the things that I do, our next tip, is I created a preliminary editing sheet in Excel or Word or whatever. I use Excel. And what I did was all of my overly used words I listed. Same with all my filtering words. And then other formatting mistakes and stuff like that that I commonly make. So this is going to be a little bit different for everybody. But create this Excel spreadsheet for each of your books. Then once you finish it, go through and in your manuscript you do a find and say you find and type in really, and it will tell you how many times you use really. And then I put it in that little Excel spreadsheet, and it's okay, I've used really 479 times. Okay, I go that and I do that for each of my filler words or my overly used words or my filter words. And then once I've done that, I go back and I start word by word going through and removing them until I get it down to typically below 50. 50 is usually my goal. For some words, it has to be 100 or a little bit more, but at least then I know that I've gone through my document and gotten rid of all these words that I know I'm going to get dinged for and just don't really belong in the story because there's more creative ways to say what you're going to say or do. And by creating this Excel spreadsheet, I find it really helpful. So it's just something to consider. And you might have another way of doing it, and that's totally fine, but that's how I keep track of it. The other thing that I have is I have also in that sheet, I have a thing of phrases that I use too much. So some of my favorite phrases or words are like of course and was and that. and then. With of course, I didn't realize until I was doing an audiobook of The Calling how many times I use the phrase of course. Every single character says of course. I didn't even go back and count because I was just mortified with how many times it came up. So for me, of course, is on my blacklist, right? My naughty list. I go in and I sit there and say, okay, how many times do I use a course? Oh, 4,763 times. Okay, well, time to go in and get rid of those and come up with other ways of saying it, or just flat out delete it, which I end up doing. Same with was, same with that, same with than. So I created these phrases that I use way too much, and I put them in there. I even do the same with some of my descriptions or some of my actions, like cracking their neck or tapping their foot or clicking their fingernails or clucking their tongue or whatever. I'll go in and say, okay, I have this character doing that way too much, and then just get rid of it. So this is just a real short, quick little post about some basic editing that once you finish your manuscript, you can go in and just start getting rid of. Um, so keep that in mind. And if you have questions or want to reach out and say, hey, feel free to do so. You can email me. Also, as I mentioned, there will be a link to the blog post where this information came from, which has got other links in it that will hopefully help you guys out. Alrighty, everybody, have a great day. Take care, and we will see you real soon. Bye bye.